Tesla CEO Elon Musk not the only auto executive upset about the idea of a special EV tax incentive targeting only UAW-made vehicles. Philip O joins us right now with a very special guest who I'm sure has some views on this topic. Phil.
Oh, he has views, Andrew. Let's bring in Bob Carter with Toyota Motor Corporation. Bob, we're going to talk about October sales in just a little bit, but first I want to get your thoughts on what's working its way through Congress, which so far has remained intact, which is a $12,500 tax credit, which you can take immediately at a dealership if this Build Back Better plan passes. If a vehicle, an electric vehicle, is built at a unionized auto plant in the U.S. versus a $7,500 tax credit if it was built at, let's say, a Toyota plant. What are your thoughts about the possibility of this becoming a law?
Well, good morning, Phil. Yes, as you outlined, there's an incremental $4,500 for any vehicle that's purchased and manufactured by the UAW. There's no other way to put this. This is just bad public policy. It's bad for consumers, it's bad for U.S. auto workers, and it's bad for the environment. The U.S. government has set out a goal which we support to achieve 50% of electrified sales by 2030. But this bill effectively eliminates over half the vehicles that are built in the United States. And we believe that this is an unfair policy. Why should a auto worker in Kentucky or Texas, Mississippi or Alabama be excluded from this tax incentive while other auto workers in the northern states receive it? It's just bad policy. There's no other way around it.
You mentioned those states, Bob. That's where you guys have plants. You've got 5 final assembly plants. You've got 10 plants overall, 38,000 employees here in the United States. Clearly, you have a lot of interaction with a lot of members of Congress. When you've talked to them about this, what have they told you back in terms of any possibility of removing this unionized tax credit?
Well, it's still being debated, Phil, and many of our congressmen and senators are actually against this exclusionary bill. However, it's such a small piece in this $1 trillion Build Back Better plan that it's very difficult to get focus on it. But we're out communicating with our government leaders to make sure that they understand how discriminatory and exclusionary this policy is. If the government wants to achieve climate benefits, the best way to do is not to exclude over 50% of the industry. As written, this bill only benefits General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis. So if a customer would like to buy a Tesla or a Toyota or a Rivian, they're not going to achieve $4,500 tax credit. And at $4,500, let's call it $100 a month, that's just too great of a hill for an OEM or a manufacturer to absorb themselves. And so what we're really doing is we're limiting customer choice. And again, it's just simply bad policy.
Not to belabor this too much, Bob, but one of the things that I don't think people understand is that as opposed to the current federal EV tax credit, which you put on your federal tax return, which is generous in some regard, but it's a kind of thing where somebody leaves a dealership, they're still saying, well, I'm paying X amount for a particular vehicle. The way this bill is written, you would be able to, as the customer, take that discount immediately at the dealership. So it would knock off essentially the transaction price, potentially up to $12,500. So the point being, it would potentially have people getting a discount immediately, and therefore it could juice sales of EVs. Does that concern you, that immediately people would be able to say, well, look, if I go here to a General Motors dealership and I look at this vehicle, it's going to be substantially lower than if I go to a Toyota dealership and I look at a comparable vehicle?
Yes, Phil, and that's the heart of the concern. As you pointed out, we manufacture vehicles in Indiana, in Kentucky, in Texas, in Alabama, in Mississippi, 15 locations throughout North America. But a customer that has to choose on one manufacturer versus another, depending on what auto worker built the vehicle, shouldn't be a policy that we support as a country. Again, $4,500 difference between a electrified Ford or electrified General Motors versus a Toyota or Tesla. That's just too great of a hill for manufacturers and to expect consumers to achieve.